folks, it's Janek Gwizdala. It's the Janek Gwizdala podcast. So many things to get to today. Most importantly, upcoming gigs, tour days, clinics, and I guess most importantly, because it's so last minute and it is quite specific to the UK audience, it's the London-based bash with myself and Ian Martin Allison, June 1st. It is but weeks away. Tickets went flying out of the gate when I put them on sale last week. There are some left, so grab yours before they're all gone. It is quite a low capacity room. I think it's a maximum of 90 tickets we're able to sell for that thing. Links are in the description below. If you're in Germany, we'll be at Thomann Music May 31st, just the day before, down there in Bergerbrach, wherever it is near Nuremberg. You can register for that. There is a link below also. And we are today going to get into a bit of a deep dive on vocabulary. As I was starting to practice today, before I hit record, as I was starting to practice, I was working on something. Haven't worked on that in a while. A sound I really like. And it was kind of a mixing of two things coming together. One being an exercise of a 5-note exercise using 2 triads from practice to performance, and the other being the altered sound and the 5 chords. So as I was doing that, I was like, there's a little bit of this, there's a little bit of that, altered, there's a little bit of 2-5-1 in there. What I'm going to do, I've never done this particular combination before. I'm going to make this the vocabulary bundle. Bass Player's Guide to Altered Chords and Scales, Jazz Vocabulary for Electric Bass 2-5-1, and From Practice to Performance. These 3 books, I'm going to throw them in a bundle if you're into getting deeper into some of the things we're going to play and talk about and explore in today's episode. And if you want to get that real sort of hardcore vocabulary side of your practice routine together, I think those 3 books might be a pretty wicked combo. I'm asked so often, hey, where do I start? Which of your books? There are so many. Which of your books do I check out if I want to do this, if I want to do that? So today I'm going to tell you, these are the 3 you should probably check out if you want to get into vocabulary and work some of these sounds into your practice routine. And we'll also take a quick recap, quick look at some chordal stuff I was talking about recently, because that is getting further into my playing, deeper into my vocabulary. It's becoming more natural. I'm starting to use it to write. So there are many things in today's episode that we're going to whip through and hopefully give you something for your practice routine and give you something for your music that makes sense. I was just rehearsing this morning with Clarence Penn's band over at USC. We have a gig coming up this Saturday, May 3rd. If you're in town in Los Angeles, we'll be at Sam First out by LAX. And a week after that, I'll actually be in London for a gig with Steve Smith, Vital Information, at Ronnie Scott's. That's the 10th, Saturday the 10th. So if you're around for that, I'm only going to be in London for about 8 seconds to do that gig, and then I'm heading right back again. But there's a lot going on, and it's at times like this where I'm doing kind of a few different things. Not only am I doing my own thing, but I'm doing Clarence Penn's thing, I'm doing Steve Smith's thing, I'm preparing for these clinics with Ian Martin Allison. There's a lot going on that's kind of different, and I'm trying to find some things that center all of that I can work on a daily basis that are going to benefit all of the things I'm doing, all of the different projects that I have kind of firing at the same time. And I just started working on this idea. I restarted working on this idea. It's something that's been in my vocabulary for so long, but I just started relating this 5-note pattern that involves 2 triads, a minor triad and a major triad. In this case, I've got F minor and I've got G major, and I'm making a pattern of 5 out of them. So this is straight out of From Practice to Performance, the Grey Book, and it's 2 notes of the first triad of F and then 3 notes of the second triad of G. And then you do that in all the inversions. But now I'm relating it to a 5 chord, to G. And maybe dropping in a little bit of altered in there as well when I want to get into some linear ideas on the 5 chord. And then making sure I'm going back to the 1. So always tension, release. working on the cadence. And just getting that sound of 5 going to 1. Wherever that might be, everything I'm playing here is 5 to 1 in C minor. Even though it's not actually the G going to the C, the actual 5 going to the 1. These are all versions of 5, whether they're diminished like this, going to 1, which is a first inversion minor triad. Another diminished on F, going to 1, which is second inversion minor triad. That's another diminished on B, going to the root position. And I talked recently in a video about the difference between closed triads and spread triads, and some of the stuff I'm working on with this Neo-Riemannian theory, changing key centers and using triads in as many different weird and wonderful ways as I can. It really is all interconnected, and I want to be able to work on kind of all of that stuff at the same time. So something melodic, something chordal, something rhythmic. And that's sort of how I structure my routine. That's how I highly recommend anyone structure their routine, or at least try it out if you want to work on a bunch of things at the same time. It doesn't have to be impossible. You can multitask. Just don't put too much weight on each of the things. Make sure there are, especially if it's something new for you, make sure it's something not too complex. Maybe we're pushing the envelope a little bit here. Maybe this isn't the first thing. If you've never done this before, this isn't the first thing I would suggest. Hey, yeah, go and do this pattern in 5 with 2 triads and 5, blah, blah, blah. This just happens to be what I'm doing. But the concept applies no matter what it is. And I don't want you to be afraid of that 2 triad thing, or the fact that it's a pattern of 5 and it doesn't fall into those, comfortable, packets of 4 notes. Try that out. Like, just take that as a singular thing. And of course, I'm doing 2-3 there. So 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1. You can do 3 2. I'm going to put myself on the spot here because I haven't done this in so long. So similar kind of concept, but 3 2. So 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3. Tough to say it and do it at the same time. And when you get some of those kind of jazz cliches, that is definitely something, that I put a ton of in jazz vocabulary for electric bass 251. There's a ton of stuff in there because that does show up. That does show up in 251 vocabulary, and it's not a bad starting place to get your ear adjusted to where things fall in basic jazz harmony in the 251. Ultimately, the goal, the immediate goal for me with all of this, no matter whether it's old or new vocabulary, language, whatever it is I'm working on, is to be able to hear it. Is to be able to hear it, recognize it in recordings, recognize it when others around me play that in a band, an ensemble situation, live on the bandstand. Or the ultimate goal of all of this work is to be able to react to other musicians in real time, with great sound and great time as well. So those are, I keep saying it. I'm sure if you've listened to the podcast or followed the channel for a while, you've heard me say that a bunch. I'm never going to stop saying it. It's never going to be anywhere but the number one most important thing in what we do. And I just want to keep, reiterating the fact that you're never too old to work on the basics. These are... You're never too old, and it's never too late to work on the really simple stuff, like inversions of triads, for instance, like I'm doing here. And the freedom that gives you, whether you're playing chords, bass lines, or linear ideas, whether you're improvising as a soloist playing linear ideas, it gives you so many options and sort of frees you up no matter where you are on the neck. I know there are probably many, learn the fretboard methods out there for bass players, guitar players, whatever. I see the titles of them on Amazon. I know it's like, the Dummy's Guide to the electric bass fretboard or whatever that is. To me, my fretboard got opened up, my mind got opened up, and my brain got kind of relaxed and less anxious about any of that stuff. Took the thought process out of it by working on just the most fundamental stuff, really not thinking about it, not putting too many labels on it, I would say. The more often we label something and we put it in a box and we're like, oh, that's that thing, and then then you have to access that thing. It's really more about the repetition of the most basic stuff that leads to the fluidity and the flexibility when it comes to stuff that sounds more complex, sounds more dense. And so often, it's always crazy to me, so often when you break down the outrageous sounding stuff, the fastest, the greatest, the hippest, whatever it is, whatever label you put on it, whatever label your ego puts on it, when you break all that stuff down, it's really, really simple. It's quite often just based around triads. So I'm always a big advocate. Practice that shit, and do it major as well, please. Even if you don't get to augmented and diminish that stuff, like get that basic major and minor triad stuff down. I was talking about the Neo-Riemannian theory thing and how to work chords around the neck and move between major and minor triads. I'll link that video below so you can go check it out a little more. There was also a paper that I linked to it, which is an amazing explanation of what it is. But that it's not that new to me, but it's something I've had to work on a lot over the past year or so, and I've been working on it more intensely, more recently, and it's really starting to sort of leak out of my playing without me having to think about it, and it's becoming a little more natural. I'm using it sometimes now as I'm writing some music right now, and using certain passages in the music end up coming from that, and sort of trying to be as economical as possible with the motion within a chord, or and make the leaps as narrow as possible, a whole step or a half step only, and just going from minor triads to major triads every single time. So C minor, move one note, go to E flat major, move one note a half step, go to G minor, another half step, go to G major, half step, B minor. Same pattern over again. That's D major, F sharp minor, F sharp major. And you could work that as a pattern actually. You could actually just play. That would be very cyclical and just moving, constantly moving down in half steps. It's actually a good exercise, especially when you get in the lower register of the instrument. That's nice. And yeah, I'm playing a 5-string with a high C for all of those of you out there freaking out like, well, it's only possible with a high C. Bullshit. You can totally do all of this in the complete 4-string range, traditional 4-string range. Yes, of course, you don't get quite as high, but you can absolutely make music. Like I started out in C because I had the range. But if we go into 4-string range, let's start out in A. Still singing. Not an issue at all. Now, my monitor, for some reason, has kind of crapped out. That's not a lot of fun. Not crapped out, but gone away from me. So that is an issue. I really hope that... Oh, good. So it didn't stop recording, but for some reason, the monitor went away, and we're back. Anyway, let's get back to chords. Yeah, and the 4-string, 5-string thing, that's always a bit of a debate. Don't worry about it. If with a standard 4-string bass, you can make pretty much anything sing out. Just be well aware of your ranges and what sings where. Maybe it takes a little bit more work. And yes, of course, physically, you don't have a certain amount of range that the high C allows me. But man, you can still make amazing music on a 4-string. And when it comes to making music, when we get away from the pattern, for instance, so... yeah, we could go all day with that up and down pattern, but maybe I want to play it maybe a couple of times. Because I really like that. I really like going from G major, first inversion, to B minor. Really nice change, especially as we started in C minor, to go from C minor to B minor, but weave it in such a way that the chords feel nice going from one to the other. Like right there, it feels like it's going to raise and go back to the B minor, but I'm actually going down a half step to B flat minor in this case. And maybe I'll change it up. Maybe I'll borrow from another key. Etc, etc. You can get into some chord melody stuff there, but yeah, that's where I'm at with the chord stuff. Super fun. I actually put out a little harmony workout last week, something totally different, not another book or another huge thing to wade through, but a really simple 5 minutes a day thing for a month. I'll link that below. Actually, I totally forgot about that. I'll link it below. It's called Harmony Workout Volume 1, and that is kind of all about moving chords through the neck of the instrument, and I made 31 play-alongs to go with it, so you could literally do one every day of the month and get used to all these great intervals, moving certain tonal qualities, major, minor, minor seventh, all these 2/5s, and moving them in minor thirds and in major thirds around the instrument. Yet another great workout for any of this kind of stuff. Link that below. It's called the Harmony Workout Volume 1. And let's get back into some of the vocabulary stuff, some of the stuff I was working on today when I got back from rehearsal. For anyone with sort of questions and queries about what it all is and why it all works, I guess, would be good to do a little bit of a deeper look into that. Let's take these triads we're working on, the one minor triad and one major triad. In this case, I'm using F minor and G major. Again, this is from my book, From Practice to Performance. All of the variations and all the keys of this exercise are in there with tab and standard notation and everything. But we'll do a little explanation here. And I'm using a pattern of 2-3. So 2 notes from the F minor, 3 notes from the G, and then I go up to the next inversion, 2 notes from the F minor, 3 from the G, and so on. And I get up to that D natural, and then why not go up a half step to E flat, and then I'm into sort of altered language. Over that 5 chord to get to our 1. So why does that work, and why does it sound the way it sounds? Well, when you use an F minor triad, you have F, A flat, and C. Now, I'm not a massive fan of the C on the 5 chord. It's not, but it's also not something I'm like hanging out on. I'm not drilling on that C. It's sort of a passenger on the journey, because our bigger notes are F and A flat, being flat 7 and flat 9 on our 5 chord. Our triad is just the triad. Our major triad is the triad of the 1 chord. And this is where we really differentiate between what is altered and what is not, because an altered will not have a natural 5 in the sound. So the fact that we have this D natural in a G7 chord means that it's not altered. It's just G7 flat 9 at this point. This is why I like when we get to the top of this phrase, then sneak into the altered. So we're using two different sounds, 2 different 5 sounds. You know, that's a dominant 7 flat 9, but then I'm going to sneak into altered before we make that kind of, it's sort of an expansion of tension. It's a little bit more tense than that. That sounds, although there's some angularity to it, is that even a word? That still sounds pretty inside to me, kind of not that exotic at all, but that sounds a little more exotic, definitely, and that's where we're getting our altered sound from. Seventh mode of the melodic minor, so it's A flat melodic minor from G to G. There's A flat melodic minor, and here's the 7th mode of it, G to G. That's where we get our altered sound from. But really, again, I can't stress this enough. That is the theory of it. Those are the notes. That's technically why it all works. But really why it all works is because certain amazing musicians in the history of jazz and of improvisation took it upon themselves to find some really kind of cool and melodic and just innovative ways to use those note selections. You won't really hear any great improvisers from the history of jazz just going up and down the scale. There's phrasing, there's sound, there's time, there's nuance. There are all these things that the theory alone cannot provide you with. Like, I can tell you all of the right notes to play for an altered scale, and you will still sound like absolute shit as a musician. You know, to get to a musical place with any of this information requires listening. Yes, absolutely, it requires the consistent, repetitive practice of the fundamental building blocks of the music. Yes, 100%. I do that literally every day of my life and have done for 30 years and will continue to do so until I no longer have the ability to draw breath. But the only thing that makes me sound the way I sound and makes the phone ring or makes people intrigued or curious to listen to my music or to buy tickets to shows or to stream stuff on Spotify is because of my note selection and how much I listened to so many great musicians before me and stole a bunch of ideas and then used my curiosity to develop them into my own language. And of course, I'm not unique in this sense at all. Thousands and thousands of great artists came before me to make it possible for me to do this. I'm just one of the next steps in that evolution, I guess, and doing my own thing the best I can. And I hope you don't lose sight of that and the fact that is what it takes. Like, theory alone will not get you there. Theory builds curriculums. Theory justifies parents spending lots of money on their kids to go to school, or it justifies kids getting into lots of debt in order to spend the money to go to school, because there is a curriculum, because there are these scales you have to learn and all these forms and theories and all of that shit. But that alone doesn't make you a great musician. Actually, it makes you a pretty horrific musician if that's all you know. I can hear you thinking. If all you know is theory and you don't really listen, if you don't really listen to music and you don't go out and play with other musicians, there's another big one. Like, this stuff requires work not only on your own, but this requires work on the bandstand, in the rehearsal room. It requires work being a band leader, being a freelance musician, being a side man or side woman on a gig. Like, all of those things go into the final product of artistry, of vocabulary, of fluency, of fluidity. And I can hear within moments of hearing someone play how much or how little they've done of that. And if you are of the theoretical background variety, I can hear you thinking. I can hear you thinking, because the ideas aren't smooth; they don't come out naturally. So bear that in mind. It's really, really worth thinking about when you listen to people you love, and, well, you know what? As I've said that, damn you, Danny Sapko. As I've said that, I've recently become a big fan of Danny Sapko. I think he has a wicked sense of humor, and he doesn't take any silly bollocks from anyone. I really appreciate what he does. As a musician, as a voice for the people, he calls out bullshit where there's bullshit. What is this dipstick lick? How many dumb bass players are there playing that over and over and over again as the pinnacle of their performance? And Danny has very nicely called people out and given it a name as well, the dipstick lick. I'm glad it has a name. I'm glad it has a face. I'm glad the campaign against that kind of bullshit has a face, from Yorkshire. Bass, Where is he from? Barnsley. I don't know where he's from, actually. I'm going to meet him. I think he's going to be at the clinic in London with me and Ian Martin Allison, so it'd be very nice to meet him for the first time. But there is that whole thing. As I said, it's important, I think, for us to understand that when we listen to people we love. I think also... a lot of people have perhaps been lured into, and far be it. It's really tough to say this the right way. Let's get to a fucking point here, Gwizdala. It's far be it from me. It's not my job to say what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. That's completely subjective, right? But it does feel the same. Having said that, from my listening standpoint, at least, that's all I can comment on. I can't talk about yours, but you can definitely see by the popularity of certain musicians, especially ones that are born almost solely from the internet. Like they haven't done and don't have any intention of doing any of those things that I've talked about. They don't go and play with other people. They don't listen. They don't work on the basics with repetition or consistency. And you can hear that in their playing immediately. But they have figured out how to deal in the metric of attention. And they do it very well. I mean, this whole... what do I call him? Guacamole Tuna, but it's Giacomo Tura, right? This whole controversy that's going on with this knucklehead that stole a bunch of stuff and didn't give anyone credit. I mean, look, that came across my desk day one. Like somebody sent me that because there was this kid playing guitar and keyboards and bass and blah, 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 blah. And somebody sent me that. Within 3 seconds, I said, well, he's not playing any of that. Within 3 seconds, we're talking like literally years ago, I called bullshit on that immediately. It was actually one of the things I was like, well, this social media is such bullshit because this is the kind of thing that people are like they cannot get too fast enough. They fall over themselves to worship, and when like Danny Sapko, for instance, has done some great videos about that whole situation recently, and that's the only place I've seen the controversy really, and some other people chiming in. I think some people are chiming in just for the like. I'm not going to title this podcast "The Guacamole Tuna Problem" or whatever. here it is buried like in the end of the episode. So I'm not doing it for the clicks or the views, but it is a quite a relevant issue right now. And the second I heard it, I was like, that guy slowed everything down, played it at half speed, and that is now miming to this shit. I saw one fucking clip and I was like, that's the last I ever want to see of this idiot. Like, no time. Like, it was not even a question. I was never going to give that any attention ever again. But he convinced hundreds of thousands of people to stick around and kind of worship him in a way. It's almost like some sort of like fake prophet, like a cult almost. Maybe not that extreme, but you know what I mean? Like a very convincing person, and has managed to work the algorithm and his collaborations. Man, I've seen some of the people that have collaborated with that guy. I'm like, damn, I bet they are regretting that right now. And some of them totally shameless, still doing it. I'm like, well, that just tells me everything I need to know about everyone in that world. So having gone on a little bit of a rant about guacamole tuna, I would say in this day and age, it's actually kind of hard maybe to separate the bullshit out, because that really is bullshit. That's not like a taste thing at the end of the day. It's not music. It's 100% not music, It's for want of a better word, it is entertainment, but it's definitely not music. And I think people quickly confuse it with that. They confuse people like guacamole tuna with artistry and with musicianship and all of that. And I think that's pretty dangerous. And I'm actually so psyched for these clinics with Ian Martin Allison. I think we're going to have some interesting conversations. I hope some of you guys are going to be there in Germany and in the UK and can, give us your take on it. Like, give us questions that spark inspiring conversation about stuff like this, because I think it's important for people to have the tools to really to be able to ask better questions, and the more people like Giacomo Tura get exposed for the charlatans that they are, I think the better. I think it's been a little bit insane, the pouring on of hate. As I've seen some extreme things, are like, oh, was that really necessary? Like, did this person really need to go that hard on this guy? Or they're barely associated and had nothing to do with the original quabble. And then you've got the people who are directly affected. They're actually being quite nice about it. Maybe nicer than I don't think I would respond, but they are definitely being nicer about it than perhaps I would be in that situation, or maybe I would have been at that age. So it's pretty fascinating, the whole social aspect of it all, and everyone's responses. But it is, maybe call it a little bit of a mission of mine whenever asked. I don't really just push it out there for no reason, but whenever it comes up or whenever it's asked, and I do like to talk about it at clinics, I like to try and arm people with the tools to ask better questions and to be better informed about what is what out there. It's like a lot of people get hugely popular because the audience has no idea that the thing that they're listening to has actually happened like a bunch of times and fucking way better a couple of decades before. And I know that's generational and shit changes, and like, not every generation has to go listen to the Beatles. Some people wanted Zeppelin and the Stones and the Police, and now people want Teddy Swims and Chapel Roan and whatever it is. Like, I understand that everything changes, and the shit that happened 30, 40 years ago is not everyone's flavor. But it is very interesting in jazz, where I think that maybe I don't think there have really been that. When I look at the difference between the Beatles and maybe it's the mass appeal of it, right? The Beatles were huge. Michael Jackson was huge. The Eagles were huge. But Taylor Swift is huge. And, it feels like eras of a similar thing, even though they are stylistically very different. It feels like eras, waves of the same size of audience, same kind of global audience. Whereas jazz feels a little bit different. I don't think I've formulated the thought well enough to really push it out there right this second, but it's sort of coming into view slowly. Maybe that'll be next week's episode where I think about this a little more. But it feels like the audience has shrunk in a big way, let's say that. And there's a lot of rehashing. I understand, look at the Ed Sheeran lawsuit, for instance. There, you could play he goes on interviews saying, I could play all the songs in the top 10 on Spotify with the same 4 chords. Yeah, okay. There's a lot of rehashing in pop music, but somehow it's managed to stay relevant with each generation has their relevant stars, whether you were of the Beatles era or the Justin Bieber era. There seems to have been this massive global market for it. Whereas jazz is really different. And I also think it takes a shitload more work with jazz, and the payoff is sort of always diminishing, feels like, from what it used to be. And that's not a complaint or a whine or a moan or something. That's fine. Like, I'm not saying like, oh my God, jazz isn't what it used to be and I don't make enough money. It's not like that at all. I chose this 100%. I'll be the first person to admit it. And I do it because I love it, not because I want to be a millionaire. It's just interesting to see how that translates and what people are doing. Maybe this is the connection. What people like Giacomo Tura are doing, or these like just lowest common denominator, utter horseshit wannabe musicians on Instagram and TikTok are doing, to have more of the Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift, Chappell Roan lifestyle image, but with some connection to jazz or funk or soul or something that's a little less popular in terms of a genre. It's really really a very strange landscape when you look at it from that perspective, I think. Anyway, like I said, these are quite unformed thoughts. Maybe I'll go get on the bike right now for an hour and a half and try and form some of them for you. This bundle, I'm quite excited about this. This is kind of what is populating my practice routine right now. It's the From Practice to Performance, Bass Player's Guide to Altered, and Jazz Vocabulary 251. I'll try and do a physical signed bundle as well, I guess. Shit, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. I'll do a physical one and an ebook one. Obviously, the ebook one will be cheaper and quicker and easier for you, but I'll try and do a physical one as well. They'll be linked below in the description of the video. Check out the harmony workout as well, and the previous video about Neo-Riemannian harmony and the free paper that I linked to that was fantastic read and fascinating if you're a harmony nerd like I am and like to get into the weeds on triads and just move all the way around your neck and create exercises and just get way into it. Find your place where repetition is highly motivating and it's something you love. I guess I'll close with that. Like, I've been very fortunate to have been in love with the work from day one. It has never waned. I've never not had the motivation. I've always felt like there are 10,000 things to learn every day and I only have time for one. So I'm really lucky in that sense. And I hope you find the place where that is the case for you, where you're so inspired by music and you're so curious, and you engage in critical thought about the process, not only in learning, but in listening and discussing and questioning as well. I think it's really important to question everything. Maybe if you leave the thinking emoji in the description, but in your comment below, I promise I'll read your comment, and if you have a question, I'll answer it within the first 48 hours of this episode going live. That's it. Catch you cats soon.